So looking at ways cities can reduce their carbon emissions to limit global climate change is critical. But the truth is that 70% of C40 cities are already experiencing the effects of climate change. Effects like floodings, droughts, sea level rise, and heat waves. Adjusting to this new reality means that mayors must look not only at mitigation, but also adaptation. How their cities can cope with the effects they are already experiencing and become resilient in the face of future climate threats. In this next session, we will take an in-depth look at how mayors are doing just that. So please join me in welcoming back to the stage C40 Executive Director, Mr. Mark Watts. Gracias, Mark.
Thank you, Vanessa. So in the first session this morning, we really focused on C40's strong commitment to mitigating climate change, to reducing emissions. But we must also adapt to the inevitable and now happening effects of climate change. The Earth has already warmed by 0.8 degrees. And as Vanessa just said, the data that C40 cities provide to us shows that 70% of C40 members are already feeling the devastating effects of the warming that's already happening, with increased flooding, dramatic summer temperature peaks, and unpredictable storms. And while the impacts of 1.5 degrees of temperature rise, even that will be serious, the impacts of a 2-degree rise or greater than that will be devastating, particularly for the most vulnerable cities and communities. Hopefully, the slide that's about to appear on your screen, I need to turn it on first to make this work. I can't read that. Hopefully you can on the big screens. But this is a map of summarizing the effects that C40 cities are facing from heat, flood, storms, landslides, and droughts. And our member cities are responding very strongly to those hazards. 47% of C40 cities report having climate change risk or vulnerability assessments in place or have adaptation plans. But this stuff takes a lot of preparation, with planning horizons of 10 or 15 years on most major infrastructure, and the lifespan of that infrastructure sometimes being as long as 100 years. Again, it's mayors in office right now that are going to be making those critical decisions about infrastructure that will be in place for the rest of the century and will have to weather the impacts of climate change. So that report I talked about earlier this morning, Deadline 2020, it found that in just the next 4 years to 2020, we need $375 billion of spending on low-carbon infrastructure just in C40 cities to keep us in line with those Paris Agreement targets. And that is not an investment that we can afford to make twice. So mitigation efforts and adaptation efforts need to go hand in hand. So things like when cities are constructing new bus rapid transit, they need to be located in places that are safe from and with materials that can withstand future floods and storms. District clean energy solutions must be designed to cope with the higher average and extreme temperatures of future years. And cities have got to seriously consider the landscape of future risk when planning the compact, connected and low-carbon land uses of tomorrow. We've seen a lot of leadership from our mayors, particularly those about to take the stage, but we also see the need for a lot more support around climate adaptation over the next 4 years. And that's why C40 supports its cities to improve, accelerate and expand their adaptation planning and action through city-to-city learning, technical assistance and research. And as we're moving now into a new business plan period, 4-year period for C40, our aim is to massively ramp up that support around climate adaptation. And to kick that off, in early 2017, we're going to have an adaptation event that, for C40 at least, is of unprecedented scale. Nearly half of our city members will be going to the C40 Adaptation Conference in Dubai, which will be a launch pad for this renewed and enhanced effort in support of city adaptation. And we in C40 have already been working at formalising and deepening our partnerships with other leading organisations to maximise our collective ability to support our cities on climate adaptation. So earlier here this week in Mexico City, many of you will have been involved in our first joint event under a new Memorandum of Understanding with 100 resilient cities, 100 RC, which has been pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation. And this enhanced partnership, driven by strong requests, I have to say, from a number of our member cities, is going to help disseminate tools and leverage resources for the 38 cities that we have in common, and 4 of whom I'm very pleased are joining us on the panel this morning. But additionally, I am very honoured now to introduce my good friend and colleague Gino van Begen, who's the Secretary General of ICLEI, someone who I've learned a lot from personally in the 3 years that I've been in the climate NGO world. And C40 and ICLEI have got a very long history of collaboration, including most recently partnering indeed with Naoko and the Global Environment Facility and World Bank and WRI on a new knowledge platform for cities, which you'll all be hearing much more about. And while that 100 RC partnership is going to enable us to provide deeper support to our common members, the 4 cities on stage today are both in C40, 100 RC and in ICLEI. And as we are able to work with ICLEI's much larger membership of 1,400 plus members, we hope we can expand much further our collective adaptation work. So I'd now like to invite to the stage Gino van Begen to share ICLEI's perspective on climate change adaptation and how we can work together. Gino.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, mayors, deputy mayors, local leaders of the world. It is a real pleasure and an honor and a privilege for me to send you the best greetings of the ICLEI President, Mayor Park, the Mayor of Seoul in South Korea, who unfortunately could not be here today. As you may know, there are some political situations in the country which requires his attention, but the Assistant Mayor, Mr. Jae Rion, is here further as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a pleasure for me to be here at the C40 Summit. We are looking forward indeed to work very closely with the C40 members. As you may know, half of C40 members are also ICLEI members, so we are bound to work with each other. And that is indeed a inspiration and also a target that Mark and myself have set in the future also to even increase our cooperation between both our organizations. Now, in terms of mitigation, we had excellent presentations this morning, but in terms of resilience and adaptation, indeed, we have to look into that in a very particular way, because cities are centers of population and of economic activity, but therefore they also concentrate risk and amplify hazards. And this is particularly true when it comes to climate change and natural disasters. As you may know, the latest scientific IPCC findings forecast far more frequent and intensive heat waves, storms, and an accelerated rate of sea level rise. These climate events will accelerate with an expected temperature of 3 degrees Celsius, although we have and welcome the Paris Agreement. Those commitments that have been made are not enough to, as they stand today, are not enough to keep us on the path of the 2 degrees target, and certainly not for the 1.5 degrees target. So a rise in such a global warming will have increasingly negative impacts on the urban areas. Our colleagues from the World Bank have forecasted that up to 77 million people in cities will fall into poverty by 2030. And the average annual losses in coastal cities due to sea level rise may exceed up to $1 trillion per year. At the same time, global warming is already happening right now. We are already at a 1 degree Celsius temperature increase, with growing impacts on the human and planetary systems. Just to give you a figure, in 2015, 1.7 million people have been impacted, mainly in urban areas, and it has cost us $92 billion. In 2016, this year, to be the warmest year ever recorded, indicated already mid-year disaster-related cost of $68 billion. But in addition, these impacts are unequal. In OECD cities, 1 out of 1,500 persons is affected. But in developing country cities, 1 out of 19 persons is impacted, so 75 times more. So what must be done? Well, the impacts of climate change obviously are essentially local and regional. We think that it is necessary to increase multi-level and multi-scale partnerships and initiatives. And as ICLEI, for example, we have been instrumental in advising, in the meanwhile, the 1,500 cities we are working with on their mitigation action planning since 1992. And in 2007, we have started to work also on resilience and adaptation planning. We work together with the 100 Resilient Cities program of Rockefeller. We ourselves bring in Bonn every year the experts of around the world together to have the latest information about climate change situations and how to react on these. In the meanwhile, we are doing this also in regional conferences in the Asia Pacific. We work very closely with UNISDR through various programs in which city officials are invited to work together with other local authorities around the world on a city-to-city perspective to learn from each other, to exchange similar experiences and to look into how to prepare one another to disaster risk reduction and building resilience. And of course, we work in close partnerships with a number of partners, but privileged, of course, with the C40 under the Compact of Mayors and now the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. And here, I think it is important that both our organizations will strive to find even enhanced ways of cooperation. The work that's been undertaken, particularly in large cities, should be duplicated and replicated and can be replicated by smaller sized cities who have indeed a need of increasing and enhancing their own capacities or are not having those capacities to undertake that work. Secondly, I invite the C40 to work closely with ICLEI towards reaching out to our nations. It has been said this morning, we have to ensure the NDCs, the national commitments of the member states are becoming far more ambitious. They are not yet on the path of the 2 degrees or the 1.5 degrees target. So we have to, together, to reach out to the nations to include in those commitments also not only the mitigation and reduction commitments from cities, but also our sustainable climate-resilient urban and territorial development plans as an instrument to achieve the NDCs. I would also invite the C40 to work closely with ICLEI on reaching out to the nations at the United Nations level when it comes to the governance issues. We need to have a long-term structured and regular dialogue with the urban resilience and adaptation community in those global processes. Nations have adopted a variety of instruments, the Sendai framework on disaster reduction and resilience, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, number 11, which request nations to support cities to become safe, resilient, and inclusive and sustainable. So, and finally, I would very much like to invite C40 to collaborate with us on accessing financing. Again, our colleagues from the World Bank have calculated that today around 100 trillion US dollars are in the hands of institutional investors, but less than 2% goes to urban infrastructure. So if we need to respond to a rapid urbanization as we need to do now already, we have to construct our cities and the urban infrastructure in such a way that they are, of course, climate resilient. And for this, we need to ensure that territorial planning and action is becoming part of our overall urban planning in our cities, and that we look into adaptation and resilient plans in our urban areas. So with that said, I would like to once again congratulate all of the mayors and leaders here, and of course my colleagues from the C40 for a fantastic C40 Summit, and I'm looking forward and will do everything that I can to reach out to all of you to increase and enhance the cooperation between both our organizations. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Stay on stage. All right.
Okay.
So now it's my pleasure to welcome on stage the panel for this session, and I am delighted to announce first onto the stage the moderator for this session, who is a real inspiration to everybody in the climate change world, a great friend of C40, the Chief Executive and Chairperson of the Global Environment Facility, Naoko Ishii. And then, if you go over to the roster. Okay. And then, next onto the stage, please, Mayor Aboutaleb from the city of Rotterdam. And then the Deputy Governor Mungkasa from the city of Jakarta.
I'm a good neighbor. Whatever, it's okay.
And next, please, Mayor de Lille from the city of Cape Town. And finally, last but not least, Mayor Sala, city of Milan.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, so let's get us started. I am Naoko Ishii, the CEO of the GF, and I'm really, really excited to be here with you mayors who have been taking the lead in the battle against climate change. This morning, I think it's Patricia Espinosa said that we were actually subject to some kind of difficult the way of doing business. And it's very true in case of GF, who has been making the grant funding to countries. We traditionally have worked mostly with national government. But 3 years ago, I have made a very conscious decision to work more directly with cities and mayors. And why? Because you, the city mayors, are at the front line of fighting against climate change. And I am deeply convinced that without helping you to win your battle, there is absolutely no future to this low carbon resilient and future of our world. So that it was actually 2-3 years ago that we come up with this a sustainable city program, and together with WRI and C40 and ICLEI, that we launched this program. The entire purpose is to support city mayors' effort to come up with more sustainable city programming, and then to assist your fight and the battle against climate change. So it's such a real honor, honestly, for me to be here, to be with you, the mayors who have been fighting this very, very difficult fight. And I'm really would like to see that and how we can help each other and help your battle to deliver the Paris Agreement. We have talked a lot about mitigations, but it's very important time for us to think about adaptation, no matter how successful we have been in the fight against and the fight for mitigation. If we are not successful to deal with the adaptation challenge, there would be absolutely no future, no sustainable development, no delivery of Paris Agreement. The world is urbanizing so rapidly, and by 2050, there will be 5 billion people living in the cities in developing countries, which almost means half of the infrastructure which is needed to be built in the cities in developing countries are yet to be built. So here's a huge challenges, but it's also a huge opportunity for you, the mayors, to do it right. Your decision today actually dictates the future of our generation and your citizens. Just a couple of weeks ago, at COP22 in Marrakesh, I personally have witnessed there is a growing momentum about discussion of adaptation. Not only just adaptation is needed, it's more like how we can do the adaptation more efficiently, effectively, and meaningfully. And I pick up actually the 2 points in this adaptation discussion. One is a lot of focus on actually the role of cities, how we can help the cities to do the adaptation. And there, that one of the entry point is actually the planning, how we can help the cities, mayors to do the planning right, to incorporate adaptation challenge, but also another focus is financing, how we can help mayors finance adaptation effort, not only mitigation effort, but adaptation effort going forward. So I was quite excited leaving Marrakesh that finally we have started talking about how we can do the adaptation right and how we could help the mayors doing this this very, very courageous endeavor. So today in this session, we have 4 mayors here with us, and we first hear that what kind of impacts and negative impacts you have been already seeing and how you have started to cope with that. But also we hear from them what are the longer term plan and your vision to how to incorporate adaptation in your strategy. And lastly, we would like to hear from them how you can learn from each other. Good lessons, but maybe lessons learned. So this is the plan. So let's get us on business. And the first question for you mayors is what are the negative impacts you have already felt and how you have coped with that. So let me start with a mayor of Cape Town, Madame de Lille. You are the first one for the first question.
Thank you for the opportunity. As the city of Cape Town, we currently experience a drought coupled with very, very high temperatures. And as you know, because of urbanization of our cities, the demand for water is also increased quite a lot. The high temperatures that we've seen in our city has got a negative impact on our agriculture, on our agri-processing, leading to scarcity of fresh fruit and vegetables, but also increasing the price of agricultural goods. That's why we have got an ongoing water saving campaign, because you can only save water while you have water. If you don't have water, it's too late then to have a water savings campaign. And so first we started with implementing water restrictions to at least reduce the demand by 10% and at least saving 800 million of liters of water a day. And so to achieve that, our dams is 15% lower than what it was the year before. We had to start, part of the campaign is to continuously keep people aware of what they must do and how they can help us to save water. So we employ thousands of people, unemployed people, to go around door to door telling people about water savings, what to do and how to save water. We're also employing people to go to our nurseries to advise people what kind of plants they can buy that can still have a green garden but help them to save water. And we've also employed more than 1,000 people to help us to go around knocking at all the doors. We train them for 6 months in plumbing skills, and so they are checking each and every washer in a tap to make sure that we save water, and it's also ongoing. With this, we had to replace about 258 kilometers of water pipes, and that helped us also to save more water. So water conservation has been key for us for the past 15 years. And even last year, we won the prize for water conservation at the C40 Awards in 2015. So, as you all know, with climate change, also the rain patterns have changed. And so instead of getting soft rains over a long period of time, we now get severe flooding. We can predict the flooding, but we can't predict the severity of flooding. And so many of our people that are living in the low-lying areas, we have started to move them to higher areas and have been able to at least save more than 76,000 homes of people living in informal settlements to get them to higher places. And then, of course, we are also very proactive in looking at our stormwater drainage systems, cleaning our canals, again, making sure. And as we go into the future, we have to increase the diameter of stormwater drains because they are just not big enough to take away water as fast as possible. So for us, it's an ongoing campaign. Water is a scarce resource. Water is life. And therefore, you have to engage all your citizens to help you to save water. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thank you, Mayor. Now I want to move on to the Mayor Sala from Milan. You are on.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Milan is, by the way, a fantastic city, but although it is also the living proof of the necessity, the need to work on climate. Why? At least 3 reasons. First of all, we are in a very specific geographic position with very poor ventilation. Number 2, the man in the past dug many canals, a lot of canals, and Leonardo da Vinci put his genius on that. But also we are facing a risk related to strong rains and floods. And number 3, of course, soil consumption and, as a consequence, reduction in green. So we made some actions in the past. First of all, working on the mobility. We have a congestion charge, and we reduced the traffic more or less of 30%. And car sharing. Now, 25% of the people in Milan is a subscriber for a car sharing, and also bicycle sharing. We have 215 kilometers of cycling lines, and we work on the waste management. 53% of waste is recycled. So what about the future? We need to do some very simple and complicated things. First of all, improving our resilience against flood and exceptional rains, working on storage bays or more green areas. Second, working on energy efficiency to regeneration and promoting urban regeneration. Third, still insist on public transportation. We are now working on the 5th metro lines, but the future is to bring the metro lines toward the suburb, toward the outskirts, to avoid this flow, or to limit the flow of private cars entering into the city every day. And fourth, improving the sustainability of our food system. And I will touch later on this point. It's fundamental for us. We managed the Expo 2015, the past year. The theme was food, and I will be very happy to tell you later on something about this legacy and how it's fundamental to work on food security. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sala. So let us now move on to Jakarta. Deputy Governor Mungkasa, you are on.
Thank you for the opportunity, and let me, talking about Jakarta first. Jakarta is a capital city of Indonesia, and running by the government, not by mayor. And then with population around 10 million people, and then the greater Jakarta around 25 million. And it's located at the delta with 13 rivers go along Jakarta, and 40% of our land lies below the sea level. This is at max like around 1 to 2 meters. So this is a big problem for Jakarta. So no wonder that one of our main problem regarding the climate change now is flood. Why flood? Because there are three reasons. One is because we are in below sea level. The second is that we are experiencing what we call it the land subsidence, 10 centimeters every year. So in only one decade, we are going down 1 meter. And the third is when we are having extreme raining, and that's when the flood is coming. It was 2007 when we have really the worst case of flood in Jakarta. It affects like 1 million people, and then cover 50% of our area covered by the water in 3 days. And of course, our loss up to around $1 billion US. So what we call it, the climate change is now in Jakarta. Welcome. So I think that's all for.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Great. Okay, so now let us move on to Rotterdam. The Mayor Aboutaleb, please share your experience with us.
Thank you so much. The chair did her best to pronounce my name properly. Very good.
I practiced.
Yeah. Allow me a small opinion poll. Okay? Do you know where Rotterdam is? Geographically? Good. Do you know what the name the Netherlands means?
No.
The ambassador knows. It's in Spanish, Países Bajos, the lowland country. Do you know parts of my city how low they are compared to the sea level? Who says 1 meter? Who says 2 meters? Who says 3 meters? Who says 4 meters? Who says 5? Who says 6? Who says more? It's 6 meters below sea level. Do you know that even with the approach of the Dutch, that even the Netherlands had been suffering a huge water flooding in 1953 with a lot of casualties? And even working with the very old technology, that the first steam engine that had been designed by James Watt in England is transformed in the Netherlands to one famous instrument, a pump. That's the only way to keep the Netherlands dry. If the Netherlands get a huge water flooding of plus 3 meters, we will lose approximately 2/3 of the country.
Sure.
2/3 of the country. So imagine, for the Netherlands, we learned from the very beginning at the primary school that water equals special planning. So we have a very interesting equation. If you talk about water, you talk about special planning. So to survive, we have to do something. Even the city hall is minus 2 meters below sea level. So if you go outside the city hall, you dig 20 centimeters, you find water. So that says something about the history of the country. That's why the oldest democracy that we have is water boards. The water boards exist in the Netherlands for more than 300 years. They are elected, and they have the right to raise taxes. So households in my city pay 350 euros a year per household to this water board to build infrastructure to be resilient when it comes to water and water management. So that's why we have thousands and thousands of kilometers of dikes surrounding the city and the port. And just to give you a little dimension, if you go to the, what this picture shows exactly what we're talking about, one of the biggest rivers in the Netherlands, River de Maas, is crossing is crossing the city. And the river is also the port. It has a length of 40 kilometers where 100,000 people are working every day. 100,000 people. I don't like to offend anyone, but I'm a Muslim from origin, and I say to my fellow citizens in Rotterdam, a lot of people pray every day towards Mecca, but we have to pray also towards the river Maas to stay calm. I mean, if that happens, something with the dikes, if it breaks, we will have no possibility to escape. The mayor of New York, with Sandy, may order leave the city. And he has 3 or 4 days the time to leave the city because you can see the hurricane coming. But if a dike breaks, there is no time to evacuate people. So massive numbers of casualties will be there. So without any exaggeration, that's why we invest a lot of money in dealing with water, spatial planning, and zoning. Extreme rainfall leads also to a lot of damage to the city. So we have to maintain the city, to maintain the sidewalks. But even in the city that is really growing with connection water and spatial planning, we have to keep in mind that we have to teach our civil servants when we develop the city to do appropriate things, like water plazas, fantastic phenomenon, places where we can hold the water when there is a lot of rainfall, and it gives a wonderful picture for the neighborhood. And then when the river sinks, we try pump the water into the river, bringing it to the sea. And more than that, we have constructed public garages and underneath basins to store millions and millions of liters of water. And I think we are one of the craziest cities in the world to finance a project outside the borders of its own city. A rowing lane with Olympic dimensions, but it can host really millions and millions of liters of water. That is how we deal with water management. Are we there? Certainly not. There is a lot of work to do in the years ahead, and I will be happy to tell you there is one civil servant from my department. Chantal, where are you? Chantal? Yeah, Chantal, please stand. Chantal is the mother of the Connecting Delta Cities. Yeah. And we're happy to have a woman on this, of this issue. If you want any information about this project, please go to Chantal. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. So now we have had a lot about the challenges they are facing. Now we would like to ask them what is their strategy to cope with those challenges in your longer term vision, how to manage cities. So now let me maybe start with that far end. Is that okay? So maybe Mr. Sala?
Yes, thank you. I was telling you before, I would like to address a very specific point, that is food security. Because from our perspective, climate change is also one of the drivers of international migration flows, and we are facing now this issue in Milan. There are some reasons that also the United Nations Environment Programme is summarized in a couple of things. Number one, heavy rainfalls and consequent floods in tropical region result in great mass displacement. And, even more important, by reducing agricultural productivity and degrading ecosystem service, such as clean water or fertile soil, climate change is affecting food production and supply, which then forces people to flee their country, their territory. Now, Milan, with the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact, has already launched a worldwide challenge on food and climate, and by pointing at this particular nexus today, Milan calls again for the commitment of all C40 mayors to enact the pact, strengthen urban-rural linkages and improve the resilience of the food systems. So my conclusion, to be very fast, is that cities can eradicate root causes of urban and international crises, but they will succeed only if they all look at the same direction and move ahead together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sala. In fact, the food production system is one of the major factors to potentially destroy the earth system. So that you are focusing, the food system is absolutely important, and you could save the world, because we need to find a way to feed 10 billion people, so 2050. So thank you so much for your shedding light on that important aspect. Maybe may I ask that Mayor Drill, about your plan, the longer-term plan?
Thank you. It is very clear that we need to act, and we need to act very fast. We need to plan proactively. We need to be making sure that we put the necessary measures in place to adapt or die in our cities. And so what we have done in the city of Cape Town, we've set ourselves the 2040 goals that we want to reach. And with that, we have set ourselves a target that by 2020, we want to have 20% of our energy mix coming from renewables. Currently, I'm having a fight with my national government because we're not allowed to buy the renewable energy directly from independent power producers. And so getting back home early in the new year, I'm taking them to court because I think it's my right that our citizens, the people of Cape Town, must decide what kind of energy do they want, clean energy, and what they want to pay for that energy, so that we are not forced just to buy from the government, state-owned entity, utility, buy dirty energy, coal energy from them. Also, we want to see the reduction of 37% in our emissions. And to achieve that, I've just signed an agreement where we have awarded a tender to BYD to supply the city with our first 10 electric buses. We also started a procurement process to procure solar water heaters. And we want to have at least 500,000 of our homes, especially in the poorer areas, fitted with solar water heaters. We have reached 46,000 so far, and we still have got a long way to go. But also adding to it, we've also changed our spatial planning. That gone are the days of having long-distance, low-density developments. We are moving to shorter distance, higher density developments to make sure that we bring people closer to work opportunities. And that is also going to assist us to reduce our carbon emissions. The other point is putting emphasis on the green economy. And to stimulate the green economy, we're offering incentives to companies that are operating within the green economy. And we have got a special area that we have selected for companies to set up there to build and grow the green economy. Then lastly, I have started to implement a mainstream adaptability in the thinking and planning of the city. So every single department must now overlay their plans with a design that can bring about to adapt our city to climate change. So I started a competition 2 years ago and award the first 30 projects, and I've just done another one. So we've altogether 62 projects of adaptability within our city, And if any of the mayors are interested, I've got a flash drive that I can give you all of the 62 projects that we are doing and to help us in the long term. And of course, you know, we're also providing financial support to smaller and medium companies that are also operating in the greenfield economy. So long term, it's partnerships. And that is why the value of the C40 is that we are here with mayors that understand what we have to deal with on a daily basis and that we can learn from each other. So long-term planning is the better. We've seen this morning that by 2020 what the world will look like. So we have to act and we have to act fast. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's so encouraging to hear directly your vision and your challenge that we were all standing behind you, your fight against. Also, with national government, how to let the national government also to understand the city's needs. So let us move on to Jakarta and Deputy Governor.
Thank you. Since our first priority is flood control, so we implement what we call it flood management approach. Our first step is to integrating our flood management with urban spatial planning. This is important. The idea is to promote waterfront urban development, thus increasing sense of belonging to the waterways and multifunction development of urban water body. So, and the second approach is like we integrated all of the program now into what we call it Jakarta Resilient City Strategy that we are just starting 2 months ago. And then of course the third is we now trying to have a collaboration with the surrounding area. Because when we're talking about Jakarta, actually now we're only talking about Jakarta as a city, not Jakarta as a greater area. So now we need to invite all our friends from the surrounding area to join the climate change program. So we are now trying to do that. And then the last is that we have a long-term initiative to develop what we call it National Capital Integrated Coastal Development in Jakarta Bay, along with the 17 island reclamation, and it is known as NCICD. And then of course, it is also facilitated by Mayor of Rotterdam, right? Our port. So, and then in CICD, it is like 30 years program for Jakarta. And then the last thing is that now we have a commitment, we call it 30-30. What is 30-30 is that we reduce 30% of our water consumed, 30% of our energy consumed, and then of course this is commitment already signed by all the counterpart, and then we starting with the low-cost apartment building by the government to show the private sector that look, the government can do it. Why don't you? Thank you.
Thank you. So let's ask Mr. Aboutaleb about your challenge and based on the Rotterdam.
Well, I told you, despite the experience we have, there is a lot of work to be done in the future. Most of it is continue to do the good work when it comes to special planning and to give space to water. My opinion is we cannot win from Mother Nature, so we have to live with Mother Nature and to do the things in accordance with Mother Nature. So very basic things, for instance, when you make a new street, to make it in a way that water can penetrate. A very simple idea. We renew a lot of streets every day, so that is a common work that we can continue to do. The port is moving toward the sea. We have 1,600 hectares of land that we would like to redevelop, like old industry cities in the world face the same challenge. But this part of Rotterdam is not protected against water. So we have to construct in a way that the building itself provides resiliency against flooding. That is a major things of technology. But that means that houses and apartments there will have another price than compared to other places in the city. Who is going to mitigate the cost of that project? A matter of doing the math with the government, but also with private businesses. A very interesting thing to do. We would like to continue our work with connecting Delta cities, some great Delta cities in the world like London, New York, Washington, Jakarta, but also other places to exchange knowledge. And the last thing is our future economy. Our future economy must be climate-proof. That's why we designed last 2 years a program, not only for the city, but for the metropolitan area as a whole, with a portfolio of 15 billion euros. That is connecting education with infrastructure, reducing mobility, more public transport, trains, rails, metros, and so on, but also investing in education of our youth to manage the future economy. And the future economy will be 5G oriented and with a lot of local production based on local printing, plastics and metal products to reduce the movement of goods in the world. I can assure you, I don't know whether you are been involved in this debate in your country, but what's going to happen with 5G and 3D printing in our cities will tremendously change the world trade profoundly. We talk with that with cities like Singapore, one of the leading cities in 3D printing. That is really a fascinating thing. We're talking about that with the 15 billion is too much for the city to do. Our budget is 4.5 billion euros a year. So we have to manage that together with the national government, but also with Brussels. And I'm really keen to tell you that the European Commission embraced our plan and is going to come to Rotterdam January or February next year to talk with us about the final deal that we would like to sign with them, because our plan for the resiliency of the city in accordance to education and economy has similarities with the European approach when it comes to smart cities. So there is a huge, tremendous work to do, not only for us acting mayors, but for generations to come.
Thank you so much. So now we are entering into the last question of this panel, and this is actually my favorite question. This is what you are learning from each other, what lessons you have followed, and what maybe lessons you learn to avoid. So that then actually, in the opening, I just mentioned that the GF, together with C40, ICLEI, and WRI, launched the Sustainable City Program. This program actually has the umbrella of global knowledge sharing platform, because I witnessed that the city mayors are so genuinely interested in learning from each other. This is very different from national government, and from public money point of view. If I drop $1, it actually spread very well among those knowledge sharing. So this is, from our point of view, very good investment. So without much my saying, I would like to open the floor for any of the mayors to share with your experience and what lessons you have learned and what lessons you also want to share. Anybody could jump in.
Yes, thank you. Very briefly, because the time is going.
Yeah.
But I mean, we borrowed ideas from many other cities. We got ideas. Let me give you some example. A couple of weeks after my elections in June, I went to London to discuss with Mayor Ken, not only Brexit, but also the activity they did on low emission zone and cycling lines. Then yesterday, you made a promise to make me a private lesson on adaptation and water. Did you? Because Rotterdam made an extraordinary work on that. Then Berlin for buildings, and also Amsterdam, Stockholm, Vienna, Paris, and many other cities can give us idea on mobility management, resilience, and adaptation. So at the end, we believe that we are working, but we have to continue working together
Yeah.
I believe that we can learn a lot, and also we can teach some specific issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, I'll quickly give you a rundown where we borrowed ideas from, and I think it's only appropriate to acknowledge the cities that we've used some of your ideas. With stormwater adaptation, we look at Copenhagen and Rotterdam. With water adaptation, we looked at Melbourne, Copenhagen, Oslo, and Norway. And with ecosystems based on adaptation, we looked at Vancouver, we looked at London, Chicago, and Sydney. Food security, we looked at Chicago, Singapore, and Atlanta. And most of these cities are members of the C40. We also participated in an international visitors leadership program. It was sponsored by Bloomberg Philanthropics and the USA government. And we also have an active climate change partnership with the city of Munich. And so we exchange delegations all the time. And then lastly, I just had a meeting yesterday with the Deputy Mayor of Stockholm, where we are now going to work together to bring biogas fuel buses to the city of Cape Town. Thank you.
Thank you. So for Jakarta, actually, we have many sister cities in the world, maybe around 20 or 30. And then one of our sister cities, I think, Rotterdam. So we learned from Rotterdam regarding the how to build sea dike. They are really good on that. So in the next 5 or maybe 10 years, we are going to build a sea dike in front of our coastal area. And then, of course, we also have good relation with Tokyo. We are talking, when we're talking about the wastewater management and minimizing land subsidence. And of course, with the many Korean cities for the sea dike development. And then also with the Singapore for green building and water management. So, of course, we have a connecting Delta city members with Hong Kong, Melbourne, and London for greening riverbanks to allow for natural river flood. I think that's all for some of our collaboration with others. In terms of technology and in terms of how to increase water resiliency in areas that are risky when it comes to flooding, Hamburg is to me a fascinating location. They have been renewing the former port area and using constructions, not dikes, as we do in the Netherlands, but using buildings, the way they constructed buildings, and the first floor of buildings as a kind of a dike. And when there is no risk of flooding, that kind of building is used as a commercial space. What's fascinating, a combination of commercial space with a kind of a building that you can close completely when there is a risk on water flooding. So that's, to me, a technological thing that I considered, and that's one of the lessons that we learned. When it comes to speeding up the process of taking decisions, our Western type of democracy is based on dialogue, a lot of interventions from our citizens and our institutions, and our city councils. It takes sometimes years to take a decision. So when it comes to speeding up a decision, 2 countries are really, to me, very interesting, China and Singapore.
Okay, so this is almost the end of this session. My very quick takeaway is as follows, maybe 3 points. Well, we have been talking a lot about mitigation, and I always feel that how we can really promote this adaptation agenda forward. So from that point of view, I was really, really encouraged to hear from you, Mayor, that you have already coped with those significant challenges, and you have actually the vision and the long-term plan to go forward. So that is a very important takeaway from my side. And particularly, second point, that many of you mentioned that not only kind of nitty-gritty kind of thing, but the principle of finding a harmony with nature, the mother nature, the ecosystem. So those kind of recognition, including food system, by the way, that the recognition to how to find a way to bring human development in harmony with the Mother Earth is absolutely important going forward. And many of you also mentioned that the importance of the youth and education and then how to improve citizens. So I feel really, really encouraged to hear. So my third takeaway is actually for the institution like us, the GM, which have been supporting the mayor's effort, but I feel much more convinced and encouraged that we want to continue to support that the mayor's efforts to fight against not only climate change, but also, how to make this a transition to low carbon resilience, but also peaceful and a development, a green economy, green development, which is in harmony with nature. So thank you so much for your fight, and we want to continue to support your effort. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Let us give them